Jack Sanborn didn't mind a bit that I was 20 plus minutes late for what he refers to as my 50-cent tour of Adventures Unlimited Outdoor Center in Milton. We're living on river time now, right? Sanborn said. Your chariot awaits, he said, alluding to a golf cart I later discovered has a gift for squeezing through narrow gaps in fences. While many visit Adventures Unlimited for weddings, honeymoons, zipline tours, canoeing, or other adventures, I was there to see several old buildings and structures Sanborn has restored and sprinkled across the 200-acre property, starting in the 1990s. He compares his refurbished treasures to Monopoly pieces, a 1920s schoolhouse here, a train car and caboose there, all tucked away in secluded spots along the Blackwater River property. Sanborn's explanation for his eclectic collection is simple. It's a way of giving back to the community, Sanborn said. In Europe, for years, people have preserved and passed on from generation to generation the history. One of the ways of preserving the history is the buildings. There's so much charm to the old. Sanborn could lead the way around his chunk of paradise in his sleep. He's always found pleasure near water. He grew up in Gainesville and spent time canoeing and exploring Ocala National Forest. He ended up in Northwest Florida while stationed at Naval Air Station Whiting Field during his 21 years in the U.S. Marine Corps and Marine Corps Reserve. The first stop on the tour of aged structures is the Fidelis Schoolhouse, which was built between 1926 and 1927. It was the first consolidated school in Santa Rosa County, located just south of Brewton, Alabama, Sanborn said. Sanborn acquired it in 1996. The superintendent of schools asked Sanborn if he was interested in it before it was torn down. Sanborn transformed the original 3 rooms and a library into 8 bedrooms, using the hallway to make en suites. The rooms are individual getaways for rent, with no TVs, telephones, or even clocks, presumably so everyone can live on river time. The schoolhouse's decor is inspired by Sanborn's late wife and avid reader Esther. They opened Adventures Unlimited together in 1976. We decided that since it's a schoolhouse, we would theme the rooms after American authors, Sanborn said. We have a Mark Twain room, Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, Margaret Mitchell, Ernest Hemingway. On the other side, we have Dr. Seuss and American poets. The schoolhouse isn't the only unconventional lodging. Guests can slumber in a 1927 Pullman dining car or its attached caboose, Katie's caboose. They sit near the schoolhouse made in the same year as the train car. A coincidence, Sanborn said. Almost everything we bring out here, we turn into lodging in order to help pay for it. Sanborn traded Milton land for the dining car a few years ago. It's 90% restored. When we started restoring it, we tore into the walls to put in new paneling, and we started finding a fiber, Sanborn said. We were afraid it was going to be asbestos. It was horsehair. Horsehair was insulation in the 1920s, he said. Another interesting feature is the solid copper water tanks that run across the ceiling. Once Sanborn had a dining car, he had to get a caboose, he said. He bought Katie's caboose from an oral surgeon and Civil War memorabilia collector who's now in his 80s. He called it the tooth caboose, using it for patients' overnight stays before oral surgery, Sanborn said. We'd already put down train tracks for the dining car. The caboose was the perfect ending for our train setup, Sanborn said. It's charming and unique and fits in with everything we're doing here. Granny Peyton's cottage was constructed in 1901, only a few miles away, near Red Rock Landing. The cottage sits on Wolf Creek, a clearwater creek that bisects the property. Granny and Mr. Peyton reared 14 children in the 4-room home. It was a cracker house, board and batten construction, Sanborn said. Sanborn purchased Ranger Rick's cabin, a 3-bedroom home, in 1998 at an auction. This was a ranger's residence at the Blackwater River State Park, Sanborn said. You'll see a Ranger Rick theme. He purchased Baghdad House from the Blackwater River State Forest at an auction in 1998. He named it after Baghdad Land and Lumber Company, which owned the home and much property in Destin at the time, he said. This house was built for the mill workers, Sanborn said. They moved it 2 or 3 times by rail. Farmers built Coldwater Creek Chapel as Holland Chapel in 1901 in Hollandtown, a community 4 or 5 miles south of Jay that was named after the Holland family. The church was later moved south 5 miles to Allentown, where it was Pineview Methodist Church. It served as the primary Methodist church until it became dilapidated, and the church's leaders had a modern chapel built next to it. They spent about 3 years and $85,000 renovating Coldwater Creek Chapel. It now sits next to the cemetery, which houses 4 or 5 Confederate soldiers' graves. Santa Rosa County Assistant Public Information Officer Sarah Whitfield's photo of the chapel appears in the Florida Association of Counties calendar, Old Florida, for December 2019. Sanborn doesn't have an affinity for old houses, antiques, or trains. He has an affinity for not seeing them left behind. It seems no building or age structure is torn down on Sanborn's watch, which I imagine is set to river time, Blackwater River time to be exact. When you get on the river, you can let go of everything right away, Sanborn said, because it's you and the river. I still owe him $2 for the tour.